The dusty streets of Pioche, Nevada stretched out before Brennan like the broken dreams she carried in her carpetbag. And as she stepped off the stagecoach in the scorching July heat of 1875, she promised herself that this God-forsaken silver mining town would be her fresh start, her final attempt at building a life that nobody could ruin but herself. The driver tossed her belongings onto the wooden sidewalk without ceremony, sending up small clouds of Nevada dust that clung to her dark traveling dress. Deanna grabbed her bags quickly, refusing to show weakness even though every bone in her body ached from 3 days of rattling along rough mountain roads. At 24 years old, she had already lived enough disappointments for 2 lifetimes, and she had no intention of adding to that collection. Pioche sprawled before her in all its chaotic glory, a town born from silver strikes and sustained by desperation. Buildings lined the main street in various states of completion, some freshly painted, others weathered gray by the harsh desert sun. Men outnumbered women 20-1, she estimated, watching miners and cowboys drift between saloons even in the afternoon heat. The sound of hammers rang out from somewhere nearby, mixing with piano music and raised voices. She had come here for one reason: a teaching position at the newly established schoolhouse. The telegram in her pocket had promised room and board plus a modest salary. It was not much, but it was honest work, and more importantly, it was 300 miles from Sacramento and the wreckage of her previous life. "Miss Brennan," a reedy voice cut through her observations. Deanna turned to find a slight woman in her 50s, wearing a faded calico dress and a worried expression. "Yes, I am Deanna Brennan." "Oh, thank heavens. I am Mrs. Patterson, wife of the mayor. We have been expecting you." The woman's eyes darted nervously down the street. "Let me help you with your bags. We should get you settled quickly. Pioche is not always, well, it is best not to linger on the streets." Deanna followed Mrs. Patterson down a side street, noting the way respectable citizens hurried about their business while less reputable characters lounged against storefronts, watching everyone with calculating eyes. She had read about Pioche's reputation: 72 murders before anyone died of natural causes, or so the newspapers claimed. Whether that was fact or sensationalism, she could not say, but the tension in the air felt real enough. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple structure of fresh-cut lumber that still smelled of pine sap. Behind it stood a smaller building, barely more than a cabin. "That will be your quarters," Mrs. Patterson explained, fumbling with a key. "It is not much, but you will have privacy and safety. The school board thought it best that you live close to the schoolhouse. Easier to keep watch over things, you understand." Diana did understand. A single woman living alone in a mining town needed protection, even if that protection amounted to nothing more than proximity to the main street and the illusion of respectability. The cabin's interior matched its exterior in simplicity. A narrow bed, a table with one chair, a small stove, and a trunk for her belongings. A window faced the mountains, and through it she could see the skeletal frames of mining operations dotting the hillsides. "School starts in 4 days," Mrs. Patterson said, setting down the bags she had carried. "That should give you time to prepare the classroom and settle in. I will have my husband send over some supplies, firewood, lamp oil, that sort of thing. Do you have questions?" "When will I meet the other teachers?" Mrs. Patterson's worried expression deepened. "You are the only teacher, dear." "We have 23 children of school age, though I doubt you will see more than 15 on any given day. Their parents, well, not everyone in Pioche values education over an extra pair of hands." After Mrs. Patterson departed with promises to check in tomorrow, Deanna sat on the edge of the narrow bed and allowed herself exactly 3 minutes of doubt. 3 minutes to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake, if running away had ever solved anything, if she was fooling herself to think she could start over in a place as wild and unforgiving as this. Then she stood, smoothed her skirts, and began unpacking. Doubt was a luxury she could not afford. She had been engaged once, back in Sacramento. Charles Montgomery had been everything a woman was supposed to want. Educated, from a good family, financially secure. He had courted her properly, spoken of building a future together, promised her the world. She had believed him, had trusted him with her heart and her dreams. The morning she discovered he had another fiancée in San Francisco, a woman he had been courting simultaneously. Something inside Diana had crystallized into cold, hard certainty. Love was a gamble, and she was done playing games where the deck was stacked against her. Charles had apologized, claimed he had gotten confused, said he would make it right if she would just give him another chance. She had walked away without looking back, because second chances were just pretty words for the same old mistakes. The next 3 days passed in a flurry of activity. Diana swept and scrubbed the schoolhouse, arranged the mismatched desks and chairs, and created lesson plans for students whose ages ranged from 6 to 14. She walked the town's main street once, noting the mercantile, the post office, the doctor's office wedged between 2 saloons. She kept her head high and her expression neutral, refusing to be cowed by the stares she attracted. On the evening before school was set to begin, she sat at her small table, writing a letter to her sister back in Sacramento, when a knock at her cabin door startled her from her thoughts. Caution made her hesitate. "Who is there?" "Name's Jake Yates, madam." The voice was deep, measured, with the slight drawl of someone who had spent time in Texas or perhaps Colorado. "I am a hand at the Turner Ranch, couple miles outside town. My boss sent me to check that the schoolhouse was secure for tomorrow." Diana approached the door but did not open it. "The schoolhouse is fine, thank you." "Might I just take a look around the property, madam? Won't take but a minute." Something in his tone, respectful without being deferential, polite without being presumptuous, made her open the door a crack. The man on her small porch was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean build of someone who worked hard for a living. He held his hat in his hands, and in the lamplight spilling from her cabin, she could see he was younger than his voice suggested, perhaps close to her own age, with dark hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to assess everything in a single glance. "I promise I mean no harm," he said, meeting her eyes directly. "Tom Turner owns the ranch east of town. He has 3 children who will be attending your school. He is worried about their safety, about your safety. Pioche can be, well, you have been here long enough to see how things are." Diana studied him for a moment longer, then stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her. "You may look around, Mr. Yates. I appreciate the concern." He settled his hat back on his head and began a circuit of the property, checking the schoolhouse doors and windows while Diana watched from her porch. He moved with the easy competence of someone accustomed to physical labor, but there was something else in the way he carried himself, an alertness that spoke of harder experiences than ranch work typically required. When he returned to her cabin, he stopped at a respectful distance. "Everything looks secure. You have a good sturdy bolt on your door." "I do. Use it. Every night, even when the weather is hot and you want the air, especially then." He paused as if weighing his next words. "I heard tell you came from Sacramento. News travels quickly in small towns." "It does. I also heard you are a fine teacher, came with good references. That matters to folks here. Not many women want to come to a place like Pioche, fewer still with the education to teach properly." Diana felt herself bristle slightly. I am here to do a job, Mr. Yates, nothing more. Something flickered across his face, perhaps amusement, perhaps understanding. Yes, madam. I will be bringing the Turner children to school most mornings, picking them up in the afternoons. If you need anything, anything at all, you can send word through them. I am certain I will manage on my own. Now he definitely looked amused, though he had the grace not to smile. I am certain you will, but the offer stands regardless. Good evening, Miss Brennan. He walked away into the gathering darkness, his footsteps crunching on the gravel path. Deanna stood on her porch for a long moment after he vanished from sight, annoyed to find herself thinking about the cowboy's blue eyes and the quiet confidence in his voice. She shook her head sharply and went back inside, bolting the door firmly behind her. She had not come to Nevada to moon over cowboys, no matter how polite they seemed. She had learned her lesson about men and their easy promises. The first day of school arrived with typical Nevada sunshine, bright and relentless even in the early morning hours. Deanna dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, a gray dress with a white collar, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wanted to project authority and competence, to show these frontier children that education mattered even in a place as rough as Pioche. By 8 o'clock, she had 11 students assembled in the schoolhouse, ranging from a 6-year-old girl named Sarah, who could barely write her name, to a gangly 14-year-old boy named Peter, who clearly resented being there. The Turner children arrived precisely at 8:15, brought by Jake Yates as promised. There were 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl. The oldest was about 12, serious-faced with his father's dark hair. The middle child was the girl, maybe 10, with curious eyes and a friendly smile. The youngest boy looked about 8 and seemed more interested in the lizard he had caught than in his new school. "Morning, Miss Brennan," Jake said, ushering the children inside. "This is Michael, Emma, and Robert Turner. They have been looking forward to proper schooling." The children mumbled their greetings, and Deanna smiled at them with genuine warmth. Whatever her feelings about their escort, the children were not to blame for her past disappointments. "Welcome," she said. "Please take seats wherever you like for now. We will arrange things properly once everyone arrives." Jake lingered in the doorway, and Diana could feel his presence like a weight at her back while she helped the younger children get settled. Finally, she turned to face him, keeping her expression neutral. "Was there something else, Mr. Yates?" "Just wanted to say good luck, madam. Teaching in Pioche is not easy work. These children, they have seen things, lived through things that childhood should not include. They might seem rough around the edges. I appreciate the warning, but I am perfectly capable of managing a classroom." "Never doubted it." This time he did smile, just a slight curve of his lips that somehow transformed his entire face, making him look younger and considerably more dangerous to her hard-won peace of mind. "I will be back at 3 to collect the Turner children." He left, and Deanna firmly pushed all thoughts of cowboys with blue eyes out of her mind. She had a job to do. The morning proved challenging but rewarding. Her students varied wildly in ability and preparation, but they were, for the most part, eager to learn. Even sullen, Peter warmed up when she produced a book of adventure stories and promised to read aloud each afternoon if everyone completed their lessons. At lunchtime, the children scattered to eat the meals they had brought from home. Deanna had her own simple lunch of bread and cheese, which she ate at her desk while preparing the afternoon's arithmetic lessons. Through the window, she could see some of the boys playing a rough game of tag while the girls sat in the shade, talking and laughing. This, she thought, was what she had come here for: purpose, independence, a life built on her own terms, not on some man's empty promises. The afternoon passed quickly, and at 3 o'clock precisely, Jake Yates appeared to collect the Turner children. They gathered their things reluctantly, clearly having enjoyed their first day of proper school. "Miss Brennan is the best teacher ever," Emma announced to Jake as they prepared to leave. "She knows everything about everything." "I find that easy to believe," Jake said, and his eyes met Diana's over the children's heads. There was something in his gaze, something that made her heart skip unexpectedly before she could remind it not to be foolish. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. "School begins at 8 o'clock sharp." "Then we will be here at 8 o'clock sharp." He was true to his word. Over the following weeks, Jake Yates brought the Turner children every morning and collected them every afternoon, as reliable as the Nevada sunrise. He was never intrusive, never overstayed his welcome, but his presence became a constant in Diana's carefully ordered new life. She told herself she did not look forward to those brief interactions, did not find herself smoothing her hair or checking her appearance in the small mirror before 3 o'clock arrived. She told herself she did not notice the way he always had a kind word for each child, how he helped young Robert with his coat even though the boy was perfectly capable of managing himself, how he listened when Emma chattered about her day with genuine interest rather than adult impatience. She told herself many things, and most of them were lies. 6 weeks into the school term, on a Friday afternoon in late August, Jake arrived early to collect the children. Deanna was still reading aloud from the Swiss Family Robinson, and the entire class sat spellbound by the tale of survival and adventure. She glanced up when the door opened, faltering slightly in her reading when she saw Jake standing in the doorway. He held up a hand in apology and settled himself quietly against the back wall to wait. Diana continued reading, acutely aware of his presence, of the way his attention never wavered from her face. When she finally reached the end of the chapter and closed the book, the children groaned in disappointment. "That is all for today," she said firmly. "Monday we will find out if they manage to build the treehouse. Now gather your things. Have a pleasant weekend." The usual chaos of dismissal followed, children grabbing slates and lunch pails, calling goodbyes to one another as they scattered toward home or waiting parents. The Turner children collected their belongings and headed toward Jake, who smiled at them with obvious affection. "Good day." He asked Emma, "The best. We are learning about Switzerland and oceans and palm trees." She pronounced the last word carefully, clearly proud of her new vocabulary. "Sounds mighty educational. Go on out to the wagon. I need to speak with Miss Brennan for just a moment." The children obeyed, and then Deanna was alone in the schoolhouse with Jake Yates, her heart beating faster than the situation warranted. "Is there a problem with the children?" she asked, keeping her voice professionally cool. "No, madam. They are thriving under your teaching. Tom wanted me to tell you how pleased he is with their progress." Jake shifted his weight, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something personal. You are free to say no, and it will not affect the children's schooling or anything else." Diana's spine stiffened. "What is it?" "There is a barn dance tomorrow night at the Turner Ranch. Nothing fancy, just neighbors getting together, some music and food. Tom and his wife thought it might be nice if you came, help you meet more folks from the community. I would be happy to escort you, make sure you get there and back safely." Every instinct screamed at Diana to refuse. Barn dances and handsome cowboys were exactly the kind of complication she had come to Nevada to avoid. But before she could form the words of polite rejection, Jake spoke again. "I know you probably have your reasons for keeping to yourself, and I respect that. But teaching is lonely work when you are new to a place, and folks here, they would like to get to know you better. You are good for this town, Miss Brennan. You are good for these children. Let them show their appreciation." It was the perfect argument, appealing to her sense of duty rather than any personal desire. Deanna found herself wavering. I am not certain that would be appropriate. Why not? You would be attending a community gathering, same as the mayor and his wife, same as the doctor and the shopkeepers. Nothing inappropriate about neighbors being neighborly. He paused, his blue eyes searching her face. Unless you have some other objection. She did have objections, dozens of them, but none she could articulate without revealing too much of her scarred heart. What time tomorrow? I would collect you at 6. Dance starts at 7, but the drive takes close to an hour. I will have you home by 11, safe and sound. I am perfectly capable of driving myself, Mr. Yates. If you could direct me to where I might rent a wagon. Could do that, he agreed amiably. But then I would worry the whole evening about whether you made it home safe, and that would severely impact my enjoyment of the festivities. Take pity on a man, Miss Brennan. Let me do the gentlemanly thing. Despite herself, Deanna felt a smile tugging at her lips. You are very persistent. One of my better qualities. So, is that a yes? She should say no. Every hard-learned lesson from her past told her to maintain her distance, to protect herself from the inevitable disappointment. But something in Jake's open, honest expression made her want to take a chance, even a small one. Yes, she heard herself say. 6 o'clock tomorrow. His face lit up with a smile that did dangerous things to her carefully guarded heart. I will be here. Thank you, Miss Brennan. After he left with the Turner children, Diana sat at her desk for a long time, wondering what she had just agreed to, and why the prospect of spending an evening with Jake Yates filled her with equal parts anticipation and dread. That night, she pulled her best dress from the trunk, a deep blue cotton with white piping that she had not worn since leaving Sacramento. She shook out the wrinkles and hung it near the window, telling herself that wanting to look presentable at a community event had nothing to do with blue eyes and easy smiles. Saturday arrived too quickly. Deanna spent the morning cleaning her cabin and preparing lessons for the following week, trying not to think about the evening ahead. By 5 o'clock, she could no longer ignore the flutter of nervous energy in her stomach. She washed carefully in the basin of water she had heated on the stove, then dressed in the blue cotton, fixing her hair in a softer style than her usual severe bun. When she caught sight of herself in the small mirror, she barely recognized the woman looking back. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright with something that looked uncomfortably like hope. Do not be a fool, she told her reflection sternly. It is just a dance. It means nothing. A knock at the door sent her heart racing. She took a deep breath, composed her features into a calm mask, and opened the door. Jake stood on her porch wearing clean trousers, a pressed white shirt, and a dark vest. He had obviously bathed and shaved recently, and his dark hair was still slightly damp. He held his hat in his hands and looked at her with an expression that made her throat go dry. Miss Brennan, he said quietly, you look beautiful. The compliment was simple, sincere, and completely disarming. Deanna felt heat rise in her cheeks and cursed her fair skin that showed every emotion. Thank you. You look very presentable yourself. He grinned at that, unoffended by the mild praise. High compliment coming from a schoolteacher. Shall we go? I have a wagon waiting. Deanna locked her cabin door and allowed Jake to help her up onto the wagon seat. His hand was warm and calloused, the grip firm but gentle. Once she was settled, he climbed up beside her and took the reins. The evening was beautiful, the brutal heat of the day mellowing into golden warmth as the sun sank toward the western mountains. The wagon rolled smoothly along the rutted road leading out of Pioche, heading east toward the open range where the Turner Ranch spread across a valley between rocky hills. For a while, they rode in comfortable silence. Deanna found herself relaxing despite her earlier nervousness. There was something peaceful about the creak of wagon wheels, the steady clip of horse hooves, the vast Nevada landscape stretching in all directions. "You are good with the children," Jake said finally. "Michael told his father that he wants to be a teacher when he grows up. That is high praise from a boy who swore he had no use for book learning. Michael is bright, they all are. They just need someone to challenge them properly. They need someone who believes in them. That is what you give them." He glanced at her, his expression serious. "That is no small thing in a place like this. These children, most of them have parents who came here chasing silver dreams. Some struck it rich, but most are just scraping by. It is easy for kids to think they are trapped in the same cycle, that mining or ranching is all they will ever know. You show them there are other possibilities." Deanna felt warmed by his words, by the genuine respect in his voice. "You have dreams beyond ranching, Mr. Yates. Call me Jake, please. Mr. Yates makes me feel like I should be wearing a banker's suit and carrying a pocket watch." He was quiet for a moment, considering her question. "I have dreams. Someday I want my own place, not just working another man's land. Want to build something that lasts, something I can be proud of. But dreams and reality do not always match up neat and tidy." "No," Deanna agreed softly. "They certainly do not." Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. "Sounds like you have experience with disappointed dreams." She stiffened slightly, her guard coming back up. "We all do, I imagine. True enough. But some disappointments cut deeper than others." He paused, then added carefully, "Whatever brought you to Pioche, whatever you are running from, I just want you to know that not everyone will let you down. Some folks are exactly what they appear to be." Diana turned to stare at him. "And you think you are one of those people?" "I know I am. I do not make promises I cannot keep, Miss Brennan, and when I say something, I mean it." His eyes held her steadily. "I know you have no reason to believe me. We barely know each other. But I am asking you to give me a chance to prove I am different from whoever hurt you." The directness of his words stole her breath. For a long moment she could not speak, could not look away from the earnest honesty in his face. "I do not believe in second chances," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then how about a first chance?" Jake smiled slightly. "I am not asking you to trust some ghost from your past. I am asking you to trust me, Jake Yates, ranch hand and sometimes carpenter, decent shot with a rifle, fair hand at poker, and a man who thinks you are about the most interesting woman he has ever met." Deanna felt something crack in the wall she had built around her heart. "You do not know anything about me. I know you are brave. Takes courage to come alone to a place like Pioche. I know you are dedicated. I see how you prepare lessons until late at night. I see the lamp burning in your cabin when I ride past. I know you are kind. The way you treat every child with respect regardless of whether they are the banker's daughter or the miner's son. And I know you have been hurt badly enough that you are afraid to let anyone get close. You think you have me all figured out. Not even close, but I would like the chance to learn more." He returned his attention to the road, giving her space to process his words. "I will prove you wrong about second chances, Miss Brennan. Or rather, I will prove to you that some chances are worth taking." Deanna sat in silence, her mind whirling. Everything in her screamed to shut this down, to rebuild her walls before they crumbled completely. But a small, stubborn part of her, the part that had agreed to come tonight, whispered that maybe, just maybe, Jake Yates was telling the truth. The Turner Ranch appeared as they crested a low hill, a sprawling collection of buildings centered around a large barn and a comfortable-looking house. Lanterns had been strung between posts, creating pools of golden light in the gathering dusk. People milled about, and Diana could hear fiddle music drifting on the evening breeze. Jake guided the wagon to a spot near the other vehicles and helped Deanna down. This time, when his hand circled her waist, she allowed herself to acknowledge the warmth that spread through her at his touch. "Ready?" he asked. Offering his arm, she took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her hand. "Ready." The barn dance was unlike anything Deanna had experienced in Sacramento's more refined social circles. Here, there was no pretense, no careful maneuvering for social advantage. Ranchers and miners mingled freely, their wives swapping recipes and gossip while children ran wild in the twilight. The music was simple but lively, played by a fiddler and a man with a guitar who perched on hay bales at one end of the barn. Tom Turner and his wife Sarah greeted them warmly. Tom was a bear of a man with kind eyes and a booming laugh, while Sarah was small and energetic, with the same curious expression as her daughter Emma. "Miss Brennan, we are so pleased you could come," Sarah said, taking Deanna's hands in hers. "The children talk about you constantly. You have made such a difference in their lives." "They are wonderful students," Deanna replied honestly. "Jake, thank you for bringing her," Tom said, clapping the younger man on the shoulder. "Now you two go enjoy yourselves. Food is over by the house, dancing is here in the barn, and liquid refreshment is, well, use your discretion." The evening passed in a blur of new faces and names. Deanna met the blacksmith and his wife, the doctor and his elderly mother, various ranch hands and miners and their families. Everyone was friendly, genuinely pleased to meet the new teacher, and Deanna found herself relaxing in a way she had not since arriving in Nevada. Jake stayed close but not oppressively so, introducing her to people, fetching her a glass of punch, making sure she felt included in conversations. When the dancing began in earnest, he asked her formally if she would honor him with a dance. Deanna hesitated. She had not danced since before her broken engagement, had not wanted to. But the music was cheerful, Jake's expression was hopeful, and she found herself nodding. He led her into the barn, where couples were forming up for a reel. Jake's hand found the small of her back, warm and steady, while his other hand took hers in a gentle grip. When the music started, he moved with surprising grace for such a tall man, guiding her through the steps with confidence. "I did not take you for a dancer," Deanna said, slightly breathless as they spun. "My mother insisted all her children learn proper manners," Jake replied. "Dancing, table etiquette, polite conversation. She said civilization did not end just because we lived on the frontier." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. Died 3 years ago, fever. My father followed 6 months later. Some folks said he died of a broken heart, and I believe them. They were together nearly 30 years, and he could not imagine life without her." Deanna heard the grief in his voice, the love and loss intertwined. "I am sorry." "Thank you. I miss them every day, but they left me something valuable, the example of what real love looks like. The kind that lasts, that weathers storms and hard times and still holds strong." The music ended, and couples broke apart, laughing and applauding the musicians. Jake kept Deanna's hand in his as he led her outside for some fresh air. The night had fully fallen now, and stars blazed overhead in the clear desert sky. They stood in the quieter space beside the barn, away from the noise and lights. Deanna was intensely aware of Jake's presence beside her, of the warmth radiating from him in the cooling night air. "Did you mean what you said earlier?" she asked suddenly. "About proving me wrong, every word?" "You do not know what you are promising." I have very good reasons for my beliefs." Jake turned to face her fully, his expression serious in the starlight. "Then tell me. Help me understand what happened to make you so certain that people do not deserve second chances." Deanna looked away, her throat tight. She had not spoken about Charles to anyone except her sister, had buried the humiliation and betrayal under layers of determined independence. "I was engaged," she said finally, "back in Sacramento, to a man I thought I knew, thought I loved. He courted me for 8 months, made all the right promises, talked about our future together. Then I discovered he was simultaneously courting another woman in San Francisco. He had proposed to both of us, was planning to decide between us based on, I do not even know what criteria. When I confronted him, he said he was sorry, that he had gotten confused, that he wanted to make it right. He asked for another chance. What did you do? I walked away. Ended the engagement, left Sacramento, took the first teaching position I could find far enough away that I would never have to see him again." She swallowed hard. "Everyone told me I was overreacting, that men made mistakes, that I should forgive him and move forward. My own mother said I was being stubborn and foolish, that good matches were not so easy to find. But I could not, Jake. I could not give him another chance to hurt me." "That was not a mistake," Jake said quietly. "That was a betrayal. You were right to walk away." Diana looked at him in surprise. "You think so?" "Absolutely. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something stupid when you are tired. What he did, that took planning, sustained deception, that is not the kind of man who deserves a second chance." He paused, his blue eyes searching her face. "But I am not him, Diana. I would never do that to you, would never string you along or play games with your heart. When I say I care about someone, I mean it with everything I am." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something about hearing it in his low voice made her shiver. "You barely know me. I know enough to want to know more. I know enough to see that you are scared, and I do not blame you. But I also know that hiding behind past hurts means missing out on future happiness." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. "Let me prove you wrong, Diana. Give me a chance, just one real chance, to show you that not all men are like Charles, whatever his name was. I will prove to you that some of us mean what we say, that some promises are kept." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "And if you fail, if you turn out to be just like him, then you can walk away knowing you gave it an honest try, and I will respect your decision. But I am not going to fail, Diana. I am not going to hurt you." His voice was steady, certain, as immovable as the mountains surrounding them. "I will prove you wrong." She wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself from the possibility of more pain. But standing there under the Nevada stars, looking into Jake's honest face, Diana felt the first stirrings of something dangerous and terrifying and wonderful: hope. "One chance," she heard herself say. "But I am warning you, Jake Yates, I will not make this easy. I do not trust easily, and I will question everything." He smiled, that transformative expression that made her heart stutter. "I would not expect anything less. Thank you, Diana." Then, slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gentle touch that somehow meant more than any passionate embrace. When he drew back, his eyes held a promise that made her believe, just a little, in second chances. They returned to the dance, and the rest of the evening passed in a warm haze. Diana danced with Jake twice more, talked with Sarah Turner about books and teaching methods, and ate more food than she had consumed in a week. Several times she caught Jake watching her from across the barn, his expression soft and wondering, and each time her heart skipped a little. True to his word, he had her back in Pioche by 11 o'clock. The town was quiet, most of the saloons still lit and loud, but the respectable parts of town were dark and peaceful. Jake walked her to her cabin door, carrying the lantern to light their way. "Thank you for tonight," Diana said, fumbling for her key. It was nice. The dance, I mean. The people." "Just the dance and the people?" Jake asked, amusement coloring his voice. She looked up at him, this man who had somehow slipped past her defenses in the space of a few short weeks. The company was acceptable as well. He laughed outright at that, a warm sound that made her smile despite herself. Acceptable. I will take it as a ringing endorsement. Good night, Deanna. I will see you Monday morning when I bring the children. Good night, Jake. She went inside and bolted the door, then stood in the darkness, listening to his footsteps fade away. When she finally lit her lamp and prepared for bed, she caught herself humming one of the tunes from the dance. Maybe, just maybe, she was willing to be proven wrong. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern that Deanna found both comforting and unsettling. School days were busy and fulfilling, her students progressing beyond her expectations. Morning and afternoon, Jake arrived with the Turner children, and each day he found small ways to make her smile. A wildflower left on her desk. A book he thought she might enjoy. Offers to repair the loose board on her porch or help her move the heavy trunk of school supplies. She accepted his help cautiously, still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to reveal some hidden agenda or character flaw. But Jake remained exactly what he appeared to be: honest, hardworking, unfailingly kind, and increasingly important to her carefully ordered life. On a Saturday in mid-September, he appeared at her cabin with a picnic basket and an invitation. "There is a place I want to show you," he said. "Up in the hills, about an hour's ride. Most beautiful spot in Nevada, or at least this part of it. Thought you might like to see something other than the schoolhouse and Main Street." Deanna knew she should say no, should maintain some distance and propriety. Instead, she found herself changing into her riding skirt and accepting his hand up onto his horse. He mounted behind her, his arm secure around her waist, and guided the horse out of town at an easy pace. They rode up into the rocky hills that surrounded Pioche, following a narrow trail that wound between juniper trees and sage brush. The September air was cooler than August had been, pleasant rather than punishing. Jake pointed out landmarks, told her stories about the area, and made her laugh with tales of his early days as a ranch hand. The place he brought her to was worth the ride. A small spring fed a pool of clear water, surrounded by cottonwood trees that provided shade and the music of rustling leaves. The view stretched for miles, showing the vast Nevada landscape in all its stark beauty. "I come here when I need to think," Jake said, helping her down from the horse. "Found it about a year after I came to work at the Turner Ranch. It is peaceful, you know, quiet enough to hear yourself think." They spread a blanket near the water and unpacked the picnic, simple fare of bread, cheese, apples, and cold chicken. Deanna had not realized how hungry she was until she started eating, and they demolished the food while talking about everything and nothing. "Tell me about your family," Jake said, leaning back on his elbows and looking up at the sky through the cottonwood branches. "You mentioned a sister, Catherine. She is 2 years younger than me, recently married to a banker in Sacramento. She is happy, I think, though she worried terribly when I decided to come here. Thought I was running away from life rather than toward it." "Were you?" Deanna considered the question honestly. "Both, maybe. I was definitely running from Sacramento, from the pitying looks and the gossip. But I also wanted to prove I could build a life on my own terms without needing a man to define my worth or my future. You have done that. You are respected here, valued. The school board could not be happier with your work." "It feels good," Deanna admitted. "Being useful, being independent. I never want to be in a position again where my happiness depends entirely on someone else's choices." Jake was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "I understand that, but there is a difference between being dependent and being partners. Real love, the kind my parents had, it is not about one person controlling the other's happiness. It is about two people choosing to build something together, supporting each other but still maintaining their own strengths and identities. Is that what you want? Partnership. With the right person, yes. He turned his head to look at her directly. With you, if you will have me. Deanna's breath caught. They had been dancing around this conversation for weeks, the attraction and connection growing between them undeniable but unspoken. Now Jake was putting it into words, making it real and terrifying. Jake, I know you are scared. I know you think I might turn out to be like him, might disappoint you or hurt you, but I am asking you to really look at me, Deanna. Look at what I do, not just what I say. I show up when I promise to show up. I do what I say I will do. I respect your boundaries and your independence, and I am falling in love with you more every single day. Tears pricked at Diana's eyes, unexpected and overwhelming. I am terrified of making another mistake. Love is always a risk. But so is refusing to love at all. You can spend your whole life protecting yourself from potential hurt, and you might succeed. But you will also miss out on the possibility of real happiness, the kind that makes the risk worthwhile. He sat up and took her hand gently in his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I will prove you wrong, Deanna. I will prove that second chances are not about repeating old mistakes. They are about having the courage to try again, to believe that not everyone will let you down. Give me time to show you. Deanna looked down at their joined hands, at the calluses on his palms from hard work, at the way he held her gently but securely. She thought about the past weeks, the countless small ways he had shown his character. She thought about the loneliness of her safe, solitary life and the warmth she felt whenever he was near. I do not know how to do this, she whispered. How to trust again. We will figure it out together, one day at a time, no pressure, no rush, just you and me being honest with each other. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles softly. What do you say? Will you let me court you properly? Let me show you what it looks like when a man keeps his promises. She took a shaky breath, then nodded. Yes, I will. Jake's face split into a grin so wide and genuine that Deanna felt her remaining defenses crumble. He pulled her gently into his arms, and she went willingly, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. I will not let you down, Deanna. I promise you that. And for the first time since Charles had broken her heart, Diana allowed herself to believe in promises again. Their courtship became the talk of Pioche, though most of the gossip was friendly and approving. Jake was well liked in the community, and Diana had earned respect through her dedicated teaching. People seemed genuinely pleased to see them together at church on Sundays, at town gatherings, and on the occasional evening when Jake would walk her home from the schoolhouse after a late working session. He was patient with her fears, never pushing her for more than she was ready to give. When she panicked because he was 10 minutes late picking up the Turner children one afternoon, he apologized sincerely and explained that a fence had broken and needed immediate repair. The next day, he arrived 15 minutes early and brought her a note from Tom Turner confirming the story, though Diana felt ashamed for doubting him. I understand, Jake said when she tried to apologize. Trust is not rebuilt overnight. But every time I show up when I say I will, every time I keep my word, that is another brick in the foundation. Eventually, you will know in your bones that I mean what I say. October brought cooler weather and changing leaves in the higher elevations. Diana's classroom was well established now, her students thriving under her instruction. Several of the older boys who had been skeptical of education were now engaged and curious, asking questions that challenged her to prepare even more thoroughly. On a crisp Saturday morning in late October, Jake arrived at her cabin with a wagon and a mysterious smile. "Get your warmest shawl," he said. "I am taking you somewhere special." "Where?" "It is a surprise, but I promise you will enjoy it." Diana had learned to trust his promises. She grabbed her heavy shawl and allowed him to help her into the wagon. They drove north out of Pioche, into territory she had never explored. The landscape grew more rugged, mountains rising steeply on either side of the rough road. After about 2 hours, Jake turned the wagon onto a nearly invisible track that climbed into the hills. They emerged finally onto a broad meadow, sheltered by peaks on 3 sides and dotted with the gold and red of autumn foliage. "This is where I want to build," Jake said quietly, stopping the wagon and helping Diana down. "I've been saving for 3 years and I have almost enough to buy this section of land. Another year, maybe 2, and I will have enough to start building a house, start my own ranch." Diana walked slowly through the meadow, turning in a circle to take in the view. It was breathtaking, wild and beautiful and full of potential. She could see where a house might sit, where barns and corrals could be built, where the land could be worked into something productive and lasting. "It is perfect," she said honestly. Jake came to stand beside her, his eyes on the horizon. "I wanted you to see it, wanted you to know what I am working toward, what I am building. Because if things go the way I hope, the way I am praying they go, this will not just be my dream, it will be ours." Diana turned to look at him, her heart full. "Jake, I am not asking you to decide anything now," he said quickly. "We have only been courting a couple months. I know you need time, need proof that I am serious and constant. But I wanted you to see this place, to know that when I talk about the future, you are in every vision of it." She reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Show me where you would build the house." His face lit up, and he led her across the meadow, pointing out where he imagined each building, each fence line, each improvement. Diana listened and contributed ideas, and together they spent hours planning a future that felt both terrifying and inevitable. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, Jake built a small fire and they sat close together for warmth. Diana leaned against his shoulder, feeling safe and content in a way she had never expected to feel again. "I am falling in love with you," she said quietly, the words spilling out before she could second-guess them. "I fought it for so long, but I cannot anymore. You are everything you said you would be, Jake. You show up. You keep your promises. You make me believe in things I thought I would never believe in again." Jake's arm tightened around her. "I love you too, Diana. Have since about the second week of school when you stood up to that mining foreman who wanted to pull his boys out to work the claims. You were fierce and passionate and absolutely certain that those children deserved an education. That is when I knew you were someone special." She laughed softly, remembering that confrontation. "I thought you might think I was too bold, too opinionated. I thought you were magnificent, still do." He shifted to look at her directly, his expression serious in the firelight. "I know you need more time, and I respect that. But I want you to know my intentions are honorable and permanent. When you are ready, when you trust me enough, I am going to ask you to marry me. And I hope with everything I am that you will say yes." Diana felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were tears of joy rather than fear. "I think I might say yes when you ask." "Might, probably." She smiled through her tears. "Almost certainly." Jake kissed her then, gently at first, then more deeply as she responded. It was nothing like the chaste kisses Charles had given her, calculated performances designed to sweep her off her feet. This was real honest, full of promise and passion and genuine feeling. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "Was that acceptable?" he asked, echoing her words from their first dance. Diana laughed, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "More than acceptable." They returned to Pioche as darkness fell, and when Jake walked her to her door, he kissed her again, slow and sweet and full of promise. "I will see you tomorrow at church," he said. "I will be there." He waited until she was safely inside before heading back to his horse. Deanna leaned against the closed door, touching her lips and smiling like a fool. She was in love with a cowboy who kept his promises. And for the first time in a long time, she was not afraid of what that meant. The winter of 1875 came early to Nevada, bringing cold winds and occasional snow that dusted the mountains white. Diana's classroom grew cozy with the addition of a new stove, donated by several grateful parents. Her students continued to excel, and word of the quality of Pioche's school began to spread to neighboring settlements. Jake's courtship continued with steady devotion. He took her to church socials and community gatherings, sat with her on her tiny porch during the cool evenings, and talked with her about everything from politics to poetry. They argued good-naturedly about books, laughed over local gossip, and grew more comfortable with each other until Deanna could no longer imagine her life without him in it. On Christmas Eve, the Turner family hosted a gathering for their ranch hands and neighbors. Jake escorted Deanna through snow-covered roads, the wagon equipped with warm blankets and heated bricks for their feet. The Turner house glowed with lamplight and greenery, filled with the scents of pine and cinnamon and roasting meat. After dinner, as people gathered around the piano to sing carols, Jake drew Deanna aside into the quieter parlor. They stood by the window, watching snow fall gently in the light spilling from the house. "I have something for you," Jake said, pulling a small wrapped package from his pocket. Deanna took it carefully, surprised. They had agreed not to exchange gifts, both being of modest means. But as she unwrapped the paper, she found a delicately carved wooden box, the lid inlaid with her initials in darker wood. "Jake, this is beautiful. Did you make this?" He nodded, looking uncharacteristically shy. "Worked on it at night after I finished at the ranch. Wanted to give you something that showed how much you mean to me." Deanna opened the box to find it lined with soft fabric. It was clearly made for storing precious things, crafted with care and attention to detail. "I love it, thank you. There is more." Jake reached into the box and lifted out the fabric lining, revealing a folded piece of paper beneath. "Open it." With trembling fingers, Deanna unfolded the paper. It was a deed to the land he had shown her in October, the meadow where he wanted to build their future. Her name was listed alongside his as co-owner. She looked up at him in shock. "Jake, I cannot accept this. This is your dream, your savings. It is our dream now. Or at least I hope it will be." He took both her hands in his blue eyes steady and serious. "Deanna Brennan, I love you with everything I am. You are the strongest, smartest, most courageous woman I have ever known. You challenge me, you inspire me, and you make me want to be a better man. I know you needed time to trust me, to believe that I would keep my promises. Have I proven myself to you?" "Yes," Deanna whispered, her throat tight with emotion. "Yes, you have. Then will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a cowboy who loves you more than life itself? Will you build that future with me as my partner and my wife?" Everything in Deanna's past screamed caution, warned her to protect herself, reminded her of broken promises and shattered dreams. But her heart, her healed and hopeful heart, knew the truth. Jake Yates was not Charles Montgomery. He had proven himself in 100 small ways and several large ones. He had shown up, kept his word, respected her independence, and loved her patiently while she learned to trust again. "Yes," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Yes, I will marry you, Jake. I love you, and I trust you, and I want to build that future together." Jake pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around while she laughed and clung to his shoulders. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, not caring who might see through the parlor window. "I will make you happy," he promised, his forehead resting against hers. "Every day for the rest of our lives I will work to make you happy." "You already do," Deanna assured him. "You proved me wrong, Jake Yates. You proved that second chances are not about repeating old mistakes. They are about having the courage to trust again, to love again, to believe in promises again." They were married in February of 1876, in Pioche's small church with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Sarah Turner helped Deanna sew a simple but elegant dress of cream-colored wool, practical for the season but beautiful enough for the occasion. Jake wore a new suit that Tom Turner had insisted on buying him as a wedding gift. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. Deanna spoke her vows with a steady voice, meaning every word. Jake's voice broke slightly when he promised to love and cherish her, and she saw tears in his eyes when the minister pronounced them husband and wife. The community threw them a celebration at the town hall, with music and dancing and more food than two people could eat in a month. Deanna danced with her husband, no longer afraid of the future, no longer guarded against happiness. They spent their first months of marriage living in a small house at the Turner Ranch, saving every penny toward building their own home on the land Jake had deeded to both of them. Deanna continued teaching, her students now calling her Mrs. Yates, though Jake joked that she would always be Miss Brennan to him, the fierce schoolteacher who had stolen his heart. Spring brought warm weather and the beginning of construction. With help from Tom Turner and several ranch hands, Jake began building their house in the mountain meadow. Deanna would ride out on weekends to help however she could, holding boards steady, measuring and marking, bringing food and water for the workers. She taught through May, then reluctantly resigned her position when it became clear that being a wife, helping build their ranch, and teaching were more than she could manage simultaneously. The town held a farewell party for her, and several mothers cried as they thanked her for the difference she had made in their children's lives. "You will come back and teach again someday," Sarah Turner predicted. "Once you are settled, once your own children are older. Good teachers are too rare to lose permanently." By August, the house was habitable. It was small, just 4 rooms, but solid and well built, with windows that captured the mountain views and a porch where they could sit in the evenings. Jake carried Deanna over the threshold on their moving day, both of them laughing like children as they explored their new home. That first night, sleeping in their own house on their own land, Deanna lay in her husband's arms and marveled at how much her life had changed in less than 2 years. "Happy," Jake murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Deanna admitted. "You kept your promise, Jake. You proved me wrong about second chances. This is just the beginning," he assured her. "We have a whole lifetime ahead of us." The years that followed were not without challenges. The ranch required backbreaking work, and there were seasons when money was tight and Deanna wondered if they would make it through. But Jake's determination and Diana's practical management skills saw them through each crisis. In the spring of 1878, their first child was born, a healthy boy they named James William Yates. Deanna had been terrified during the pregnancy, worried that something would go wrong, but Jake stayed calm and steady, supporting her through every fear and discomfort. When she finally held their son in her arms, she wept with joy and relief. "He is perfect," Jake said, his voice filled with wonder as he gently touched the baby's tiny hand. "You are amazing, Deanna. I love you so much." 2 years later, a daughter arrived, Catherine Sarah, named for Deanna's sister and Sarah Turner. This time Deanna was less afraid, more confident in herself and in Jake's unwavering support. Little James was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. The ranch prospered gradually. Jake proved to be a gifted rancher, with a knack for breeding quality horses that fetched good prices in mining towns throughout Nevada. Deanna kept meticulous records, managed their finances, and dealt with buyers with the same fierce competence she had once brought to teaching. They added on to the house as the children grew, building bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Deanna planted a garden that thrived despite the harsh climate, learning which crops could survive the altitude and temperature swings. She also began teaching James and Catherine at home, unable to abandon her love of education even though the nearest school was now 15 miles away. In 1882, when James was 4 and Catherine was 2, Diana discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she carried twins, boys who arrived early and tiny but stubborn and determined to survive. They named them Thomas and Benjamin, and the house rang with noise and laughter and the constant chaos of 4 small children. "We have our own school now," Jake joked, watching Deanna manage reading lessons for James while nursing the twins and keeping Catherine from eating the chalk. "I always wanted a large family," Deanna admitted. "I just did not imagine it would all happen quite so quickly." Those years were exhausting and wonderful, filled with the daily struggles and joys of raising children and building a ranch. But through it all, Jake remained what he had always been: steady, loving, utterly dependable. He helped with the children without being asked, cleaned dishes and changed diapers, read stories and kissed scraped knees. "You are a good father," Deanna told him one evening after they had finally gotten all 4 children to sleep. "I am just doing what needs doing," Jake replied, pulling her close on the porch where they sat watching the sunset. "Same as you. We make a good team. The best." He kissed her temple gently. "I told you we would figure it out together. I told you I would prove you wrong about second chances." Deanna smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "You did. Every single day you prove it again." As their children grew, the ranch continued to flourish. Jake hired additional hands to help with the work, and Deanna took on some teaching responsibilities for neighboring families who wanted their children educated. She held classes 3 days a week in their large front room, teaching reading and arithmetic and history to a dozen students whose ages ranged from 5 to 13. In 1888, when James was 10, Diana received a letter from her sister Catherine. Their mother had passed away after a short illness, and Catherine wanted Deanna to know. The letter arrived too late for Deanna to travel to Sacramento for the funeral, but she grieved nonetheless, regretting that her mother had never met Jake or the children, never seen how happy Deanna had become. "She did not approve of me leaving Sacramento," Deanna told Jake as they sat together in the quiet evening. "She thought I was running away, being stubborn and foolish. I wish I could have shown her that I was right to take that chance, to start over in Pioche." "Maybe she knew at the end," Jake suggested gently. "Maybe Catherine told her about us, about the children, about the life we built. I like to think she understood, even if she could not say so." In 1890, Pioche's school board approached Diana with an offer to return as head teacher. The town had grown considerably, now boasting over 3,000 residents. The school needed someone experienced and dedicated, someone who could manage multiple grades and handle the diverse needs of a mining town's children. Diana was torn. She loved teaching, missed the structure of a formal classroom, but her own children still needed her, and the ranch demanded considerable time and attention. "Take the position," Jake urged when she discussed it with him. "James is 12 now, old enough to help more with the younger ones. I can hire another hand to pick up the slack at the ranch. You are too good a teacher to keep hidden away up here." "Are you certain?" Absolutely. I married a fierce, brilliant woman who has a gift for teaching. I will not be the one to hold her back from using that gift. So Deanna returned to teaching, this time in a proper school building with multiple rooms and modern supplies. She taught the older students, challenging them with advanced mathematics and literature, while younger teachers handled the primary grades. Her own children attended as well, and she took fierce pride in their academic achievements. The years rolled on, marked by the steady rhythms of ranch life and family celebrations. James grew tall and serious, with his father's work ethic and his mother's sharp mind. Catherine was spirited and curious, always getting into mischief, but so charming that she rarely faced real consequences. The twins, Thomas and Benjamin, were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and getting into twice as much trouble as Catherine ever managed. In 1895, Tom Turner passed away after a sudden illness. Jake grieved deeply for the man who had given him his start, who had become like a father to him. Sarah Turner leaned on the Yates family during her mourning, and Deanna made sure to visit regularly, bringing food and company. "Tom thought of you like a son," Sarah told Jake at the funeral. "He was so proud of what you built, of the man you became. He said you were the best example of what hard work and integrity could accomplish." That same year, James announced his intention to attend college in California, wanting to study engineering. Diana's heart broke a little at the thought of her oldest leaving, but she and Jake supported his decision fully. They had saved carefully over the years, and they could afford to give their children opportunities they themselves had never had. When James left for San Francisco in September, Diana cried for 3 days. Jake held her each night, understanding her grief even as he encouraged her to be proud of their son. "We raised him to be independent and ambitious," Jake reminded her. "This is what success looks like, even though it hurts to let him go." Catherine, now 15, had grown into a beautiful young woman with her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes. She showed no interest in leaving Nevada, declaring that she intended to marry a rancher and stay in the mountains forever. Deanna was not sure whether to be relieved or worried. The twins, at 13, were already taller than Deanna and showing signs of eventually matching their father's height. They loved ranch work, especially anything involving horses, and spent every free moment in the stables or out riding the range. In 1898, as Diana approached her 47th birthday, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this life. 23 years earlier, she had stepped off a stagecoach in Pioche, bitter and disillusioned, convinced that love was a fool's game and second chances were myths told by the naive. Now she stood on her porch, watching Jake work with the twins in the corral, his movements still strong and sure despite approaching 50. She thought about their 4 children, the ranch they had built, the community they had served, the life they had created together. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, climbing the porch steps and settling into the chair beside hers. "About the day you told me you would prove me wrong," Deanna said, taking his hand. "About how terrified I was to trust you, to trust anyone. About how you kept every promise you ever made." Jake lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles the way he had done 1,000 times over the years. "Best decision I ever made, pursuing a stubborn schoolteacher who did not believe in second chances. Best decision I ever made was giving you the chance to prove yourself," Deanna countered. "You changed my life, Jake Yates. We changed each other's lives. That is what real partnership means." He pulled her gently from her chair and into his lap, wrapping his arms around her waist while she laughed and protested that they were too old for such nonsense. "Never too old," Jake murmured against her neck. "I will never be too old to hold my wife, to tell her I love her, to thank whatever providence brought her to Nevada and into my life. They sat together as the sun set over their ranch, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. From inside the house, they could hear Catherine singing while she helped prepare supper. The twins' laughter drifted from the corral where they were still working with the horses. Somewhere in California, James was probably buried in engineering textbooks, working toward his own dreams. Deanna thought about the woman she had been, angry and hurt and closed off from the possibility of happiness. She thought about Charles and the betrayal that had sent her fleeing west. And she felt nothing but gratitude, because without that heartbreak, she would never have come to Pioche, would never have met Jake, would never have built this beautiful, complicated, wonderful life. "I love you," she said simply, the words encompassing everything, the years and the struggles and the triumphs, the children and the ranch and the thousands of small moments that had woven their lives together into something unbreakable. "I love you too," Jake replied. "Always have, always will. Until my last breath and beyond." In 1900, as a new century dawned, the Yates family gathered to celebrate. James had graduated from college and returned to Nevada with his new wife, a schoolteacher he had met in San Francisco. Catherine had indeed married a rancher, a good man named Daniel who owned property adjacent to the Yates ranch. The twins, now 18, had taken over much of the daily ranch operations, allowing Jake to step back slightly from the most demanding physical work. Deanna had retired from teaching the year before, finally admitting that managing a classroom full of energetic children was a young woman's work. But she still tutored students privately and served on the school board, ensuring that Pioche's children received quality education. They held the celebration at the ranch, with tables set up in the meadow where Jake had first proposed. 3 generations of Yateses gathered, along with friends and neighbors who had become like family over the years. Sarah Turner was there, now elderly but still sharp and engaged. The Patterson family attended, along with former students of Deanna's who were now adults with children of their own. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Jake stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he announced, his voice still strong despite the silver in his hair. "To new beginnings, to hard work, and to the power of taking chances. 25 years ago, I met a woman who did not believe in second chances. I told her I would prove her wrong, and I have spent every day since then trying to keep that promise." He turned to Deanna, his blue eyes still as bright and honest as the day they met. "Deanna, you took a chance on a cowboy who had nothing to offer but hard work and honest promises. You trusted me when trust did not come easy. You built this life with me, raised our children with wisdom and love, and made every day an adventure. You are my best friend, my partner, my great love. Thank you for proving that second chances are real, that promises can be kept, that love can last." Deanna stood and moved to his side, her eyes bright with tears. "Thank you for being patient with my fears. Thank you for showing up every single day. Thank you for being exactly who you said you would be." She turned to face their gathered family and friends. "I came to Nevada running from disappointment. I found hope, purpose, and a love beyond anything I imagined possible. To second chances, to kept promises, and to the cowboy who proved me wrong in all the best ways." Everyone raised their glasses, voices joining in agreement. To second chances. Later, as the party continued and their children entertained the grandchildren with stories and songs, Deanna and Jake slipped away to walk through the meadow under the stars. "You ever regret it?" Deanna asked. "Taking a chance on a difficult woman who made you work so hard to earn her trust?" Jake stopped and pulled her close, his hands framing her face tenderly. "Not for a single second. You were worth every moment of patience, every effort to prove myself. And you were never difficult, Deanna. You were cautious and careful with your heart because someone had broken it. That was not a flaw. That was wisdom. I am just grateful you eventually decided I was worth the risk. Best risk I ever took, Deanna assured him, rising on her toes to kiss him the way she had done countless times over their quarter-century together. They stood in the meadow where their dreams had first taken root, surrounded by the evidence of those dreams made real. The house stood solid and welcoming, lights glowing in the windows. Their children's laughter drifted on the night air. The ranch stretched around them, prosperous and well-tended. "We did it," Deanna whispered. "We really did it. We built something lasting." "We did," Jake agreed. "And we are not done yet. We have grandchildren to spoil, more adventures ahead, more memories to make, more promises to keep, always. I will keep promising to love you every day for the rest of our lives. And I will keep proving that some promises are meant to be eternal." They walked back to the celebration hand in hand, their path lit by starlight and lanterns and the bright future they had built together. Behind them lay 25 years of kept promises, of trust earned and love deepened. Ahead lay whatever years remained, and Deanna faced them without fear, secure in the knowledge that Jake Yates would be beside her, steady and true. She had not believed in second chances until a cowboy had said he would prove her wrong. And he had kept that promise every single day in ways large and small, building a love that transformed her life and healed her heart. As the new century began, Deanna Yates smiled at her husband, her partner, her proof that second chances were real, and that some cowboys kept every promise they ever made. Years continued to roll by with the gentle rhythm of a life well lived. In 1902, Catherine gave birth to Deanna and Jake's first granddaughter, a tiny girl with dark hair and a fierce cry that Deanna said reminded her of herself. James and his wife Rachel had a son the following year, a quiet, observant boy who loved books almost as much as horses. The twins remained unmarried, too busy with ranch operations to pay much attention to courtship, though Deanna suspected that Thomas had his eye on a young woman who worked at the mercantile in Pioche. Benjamin seemed content with bachelor life, claiming the horses were all the companionship he needed. In 1905, Deanna turned 54, and Jake surprised her with a trip to Sacramento. It had been 30 years since she had seen the city where she had grown up, and the visit was bittersweet. Catherine was thrilled to see her sister, and they spent long hours catching up on 3 decades of life. Deanna introduced Jake to her extended family, proud to show them the man she had married and the life they had built. "I am sorry for how Mother treated you when you left," Catherine said one evening when they were alone. "She did not understand that you were being strong, not stubborn. She never could see the difference." "It does not matter anymore," Deanna assured her sister. "Everything worked out exactly as it should. If I had stayed, if I had given Charles another chance, I would have missed out on Jake, on the children, on everything that makes my life worth living." When they returned to Nevada, Deanna felt the relief of coming home. California was beautiful, but it was not where she belonged anymore. She belonged in the mountains, on the ranch, with Jake and the life they had created. In 1908, Thomas finally married his mercantile girl, a practical young woman named Alice who fit seamlessly into ranch life. Benjamin shocked everyone by announcing his engagement to a widow from Virginia City who had 3 young children. "Figured if I was going to be a bachelor forever, I should at least be a useful one," he joked. "These kids need a father and their mother needs help." Seemed like the practical thing to do. Diana watched her youngest sons start families of their own and felt the peculiar mix of pride and melancholy that came with seeing your children become adults. Jake, sensing her mood, pulled her close one evening and reminded her that this was what they had worked for, to raise independent, capable children who could build their own lives. "I know," Deanna said. "I just miss them being small sometimes. Miss the noise and chaos of the house full of children." "We have grandchildren now," Jake pointed out. "Plenty of noise and chaos when they visit." He was right. Their home remained a gathering place for the extended family, especially during holidays and special occasions. The ranch had expanded significantly over the years, now encompassing several thousand acres and employing a dozen hands year-round. Jake had built additional houses on the property for James and for the twins and their families, creating a small compound where the Yates family worked and lived together. In 1910, Diana received an invitation to speak at the dedication of Pioche's new school building. The town had continued to grow, and the original schoolhouse had long since been replaced by a larger structure. Now they were unveiling an even bigger building with multiple classrooms, a proper library, and modern facilities. Deanna stood before the assembled crowd, looking out at faces both familiar and new. She saw former students who were now parents themselves, children she had taught who had grown into productive citizens. She saw the evidence of education's impact on this rough mining town, saw the way it had civilized and improved life for everyone. "When I arrived in Pioche 35 years ago," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I came here broken and disillusioned. I did not believe in much of anything except my own independence. But this town, these people, they taught me that community matters, that education matters, that giving people chances matters." She paused, finding Jake's face in the crowd. "I came here not believing in second chances. But Nevada taught me that second chances are what make us human, what give us hope. Every child who enters this school is getting a chance to learn, to grow, to become more than they were. That is what education does. That is what this building represents. Not just books and lessons, but possibility and hope." The dedication ceremony was followed by a celebration, and Deanna found herself surrounded by well-wishers and former students sharing memories. A woman in her 30s approached with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Yates, I do not know if you remember me. I was Sarah Mitchell, now Sarah Donovan. You taught me in 1876 in that first schoolhouse. I was 10 years old and could barely read." Deanna studied the woman's face and smiled as memory clicked into place. "I remember. You struggled with reading but excelled at mathematics. You could calculate figures in your head faster than I could write them on the slate." Sarah laughed, wiping her eyes. "You remembered. All these years and you remembered. Mrs. Yates, you changed my life. Because of you, I got an education, became a bookkeeper, married a good man. My children are in school now because you showed me that learning matters. I just wanted to thank you." Similar encounters happened throughout the evening, former students expressing gratitude, sharing how Diana's teaching had impacted their lives. By the time Jake finally escorted her home, Diana was exhausted but glowing with satisfaction. "You made a difference," Jake said as they drove through the starlit night. "All those years of teaching, all those children you believed in, they are out there living good lives because of you." "We both made a difference," Diana corrected. "You with the ranch, showing people that hard work and integrity matter. Me with teaching. Together, we built something bigger than just our family. We helped build a community." As they neared their ranch, Deanna reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 35 years since she had stepped off that stagecoach, angry and hurt, and determined never to trust again. 35 years of learning that trust was possible, that promises could be kept, that love could heal. The years that followed were quieter. Jake and Deanna gradually stepped back from daily ranch operations, allowing their sons to take over while they enjoyed a well-earned rest. They spent their days reading, working in Diana's expanded garden, and entertaining a growing brood of grandchildren. Jake's health remained robust until 1915, when a fall from a horse left him with a badly broken leg. He was 64, and the injury healed slowly, leaving him with a permanent limp. Diana nursed him through the recovery with fierce devotion, refusing to let him become discouraged. "We have been through worse," she reminded him when he grew frustrated with his limitations. "Remember the drought of '92, the harsh winter of '98. We survived those, we will survive this." "I hate being useless," Jake admitted one difficult day. "You are not useless. You are healing. There is a difference." Diana took his hand gently. "You taught me about patience 39 years ago when I was afraid to trust. Now let me return the favor. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself time to heal." He did heal eventually, though he never regained his previous level of physical ability. But he adapted, finding new ways to contribute to ranch operations, focusing on planning and management rather than physical labor. And through it all, Diana remained by his side, just as he had remained by hers through every challenge they had faced. In 1920, as post-war America celebrated and changed, Jake and Diana marked their 44th wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. James gave a toast, speaking eloquently about the example his parents had set, the way they had built a life based on mutual respect, enduring love, and kept promises. "You showed us what marriage should be," James said, raising his glass. "Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth fighting for. Thank you for loving each other so well and for teaching us what true partnership looks like." That night, lying in bed in the house they had built with their own hands 44 years earlier, Diana and Jake talked quietly about the life they had shared. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" Diana asked. "If I had not come to Nevada, if we had never met," sometimes, Jake admitted. "And I thank God every time that you did come here, that I was foolish enough to tell a hurting woman that I would prove her wrong about second chances." "You were not foolish. You were brave. And you were right." Diana shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder the way she had done countless times over their decades together. "You proved me wrong in the most wonderful way possible. You showed me that love was real, that promises could be kept, that taking chances could lead to happiness." "Best chance I ever took was loving you," Jake murmured, his arm tightening around her. "Best decision I ever made was refusing to let you hide behind your fears." They drifted to sleep in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that they had built something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. The 1920s brought more change to Nevada and to the Yates family. Mining in Pioche slowed significantly, and the town's population declined. Many families moved on, seeking opportunities elsewhere. But the Yates ranch remained stable, diversifying into cattle as well as horses, adapting to changing markets and times. Catherine's children were grown now, with families of their own. James had become a respected engineer in Reno but returned to the ranch frequently, unable to stay away from his roots for long. The twins had each fathered several children, and the ranch rang with the voices of a third generation of Yateses. Diana, now in her 70s, moved more slowly but remained sharp and engaged. She had published a book about teaching in frontier Nevada, drawing on her journals and memories to create a record of those early years in Pioche. The book was well received, and she received letters from teachers across the West who found inspiration in her stories. Jake, approaching 75, was still active despite his old injury, still offering advice and wisdom to his sons and grandchildren. He walked with Diana every evening, weather permitting, discussing the day's events and reminiscing about their long journey together. In the spring of 1925, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with a gathering that brought family and friends from across Nevada and beyond. The celebration lasted 3 days, with people camping on the ranch property, sharing meals and stories and laughter. On the actual anniversary day, a newspaper reporter from Reno came to interview them about their 50-year marriage. Diana and Jake sat together on their porch, hands intertwined, answering questions about their life together. "What is the secret to a lasting marriage?" the reporter asked. Jake and Diana looked at each other and smiled. "Keeping your promises," Jake said simply. "Showing up every day, choosing to love even when it is hard. Trusting even when you are afraid," Diana added. "Believing that some people mean what they say. Taking chances on people who prove themselves worthy of those chances." "Any regrets?" the reporter pressed. "None," they said in unison, then laughed at the synchronicity. The resulting article appeared in newspapers across Nevada, a heartwarming story of frontier love and lasting partnership. Diana cut it out and tucked it into the wooden box Jake had made her all those years ago, the box where she kept her most precious mementos. As the decade progressed, Diana and Jake grew older with grace and dignity. They faced the inevitable aches and pains of advanced age with humor and mutual support. When Jake developed a persistent cough in 1928, Diana insisted he see a doctor. The diagnosis was lung damage, probably from years of breathing Nevada dust and smoke. "How long?" Jake asked the doctor bluntly. "Hard to say. Could be years if you take care of yourself. Avoid exertion, stay warm in winter, rest when you need to." Jake followed the doctor's orders, mostly to please Diana, though they both knew his time was limited. He was 78 years old and had lived a full, rich life. He had no complaints. They spent that final year making memories with their family, telling stories to grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on the history of the ranch and the family. Diana insisted on recording Jake's stories, filling journals with his memories of building the ranch, raising their children, loving his wife for more than 50 years. In December of 1928, as winter settled over the Nevada mountains, Jake caught a cold that quickly worsened into pneumonia. Diana nursed him devotedly, but they both knew this was a battle he would not win. On a quiet morning with snow falling gently outside, Jake called Diana to his bedside. Their children were in the house, gathering to say goodbye, but for this moment, Jake wanted time alone with his wife. "I kept my promise," he whispered, his voice weak but determined. "I proved you wrong about second chances." Diana clutched his hand, tears streaming down her face. "You did. Every single day you proved it. You gave me the most beautiful life, Jake. You loved me so well. I love you still. I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next." He managed a smile despite his labored breathing. "Do not grieve too long, Diana. You have more years ahead. Live them fully. Teach again if you want, travel, enjoy the grandchildren. Promise me you will keep living." "I promise," Diana whispered through her tears, "but I will miss you every moment of every day." "I will be waiting for you," Jake assured her. "When your time comes, I will be waiting. We will have eternity together. But for now, love, be happy. That is all I ever wanted for you." He died peacefully an hour later, surrounded by his family, his hand still holding Diana's. The funeral 3 days later drew people from across Nevada, all coming to pay respects to a man who had been known for his integrity, his hard work, and his devotion to his family. Diana stood at the grave, watching them lower her husband into the frozen ground, and felt as though part of her soul was being buried with him. 52 years they had been together, more than 3/4 of her life. How did one continue living when such a fundamental piece of oneself was gone? But she had made him a promise, and Brennan Yates had learned long ago the importance of keeping promises. So she lived. She moved in with Catherine for the winter, allowing herself to grieve while being surrounded by family. She wrote about Jake, filling page after page with memories, ensuring that future generations would know what kind of man he had been. Spring brought a measure of healing. Deanna returned to the ranch, to the house she and Jake had built, and found comfort in the familiar spaces they had shared. She worked in her garden, read to her great-grandchildren, and offered advice to her sons as they continued running the ranch. She also returned to teaching, taking on a few students who needed tutoring, finding purpose in education once again. The work was not as demanding as running a full classroom, but it gave her days structure and meaning. In 1930, Deanna published another book, this one a memoir of her marriage to Jake. She wrote honestly about her initial fears, about Charles's betrayal and her determined independence. She wrote about Jake's patient courtship, about learning to trust again, about building a life and a family based on kept promises and enduring love. The book resonated with readers across the country, and Deanna received hundreds of letters from women who had faced similar heartbreaks, who had struggled to trust again, who had eventually found love with patient, steadfast men. She answered every letter personally, sharing words of encouragement and hope. Deanna lived 8 more years after Jake's death, years filled with family and purpose and quiet satisfaction. She watched her great-grandchildren grow, saw the ranch continue to prosper under her son's management, and took comfort in the legacy she and Jake had built together. In the spring of 1936, at the age of 85, Deanna fell ill with influenza. She was tired, ready to rest, ready to see Jake again. She made her peace with her children, distributed her precious belongings among grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and prepared herself for the end. On a warm May evening, surrounded by 3 generations of the family she and Jake had created, Brennan Yates slipped peacefully away. Her last words were simple: "Jake is waiting." They buried her beside her husband on a hillside overlooking the ranch, the mountains rising majestically in the distance. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, her children had inscribed a simple epitaph. She learned to trust again. She believed in second chances. She lived well. The ranch continued, passed down through the Yates family for generations. The story of Jake and Deanna became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of what love should be. Patient, steadfast, earned through action rather than empty words, built on trust that was carefully constructed and faithfully maintained. In Pioche, a school was eventually named after Deanna, honoring her decades of dedication to education. In the front hall, a plaque told her story, how she had come to Nevada broken and disillusioned, how she had rebuilt her life through hard work and courage, how she had touched countless lives through her teaching. But the real memorial to Deanna and Jake Yates was not a building or a plaque. It was the family they had raised, the values they had instilled, the example they had set. It was in every kept promise, every act of patience, every moment when love chose trust over fear. Years later, one of Deanna's great-great-granddaughters, researching family history, found the wooden box Jake had made for Deanna more than a century earlier. Inside, carefully preserved, were letters, photographs, and a worn newspaper clipping from 1925. The clipping contained the interview with Jake and Deanna on their 50th anniversary. The young woman read her ancestors' words about promises and trust, about second chances and enduring love. She traced the carved initials on the box lid and felt connected across time to a woman she had never met. A woman who had been brave enough to trust again after betrayal, brave enough to take a chance on a cowboy who promised to prove her wrong. That legacy of courage and love, of promises kept and trust earned, continued through the generations. It lived on in every Yates descendant, who chose to trust despite fear, who kept their word despite difficulty, who believed in second chances because Jake had proven to Diana that they were real. The Nevada mountains still stood tall over the ranch land, unchanged by the passage of time. The meadow where Jake had proposed remained beautiful, a place where each new generation of Yates children played and dreamed. And somewhere in the eternal beyond, Jake and Deanna were together again, their love having transcended death just as it had transcended doubt and fear, and all the obstacles that had once seemed insurmountable. They had proven that second chances were real, that promises could be kept, that love could last. And that truth, that beautiful, hard-won truth, remained their greatest gift to all who came after them.